Good evening, Mr. Onefeather. How you doing tonight?
Fantastic, David. It has been an interesting week and a lot of, what's the word for it, volatile occurrences have been going on. So for people who are, just recuperating from that Memorial Day weekend, it's interesting how astrologically a lot of things have been happening that are reflected here on the planet. And one of the things I find very interesting, because of the Piscean influence of Neptune and Chiron in Pisces being squared by this passage of all these planets and the sun and etc. moving into Gemini, is that we've been having some bizarre things happening with contaminations and oil spills and trains blowing up and things of that sort. And I think that we're seeing, how that edgy side of this square is manifesting itself. And of course, unfortunately, you really can't predict how it's going to show up. And that's why I keep telling people, look around, look around, look around, because things are going on in your environment and you need to be on top of things.
Yeah, pay attention. Change is just change city right now. Things are just one way you think it's going to be something, and then the next minute, everything is changing right in front of your eyes. That weekend we just went through, how powerful was that? I mean, coming out of the week that we just had, it's a new feeling. It's a new thought process. It's a new direction, and we're kind of in those really weird waters.
Oh, absolutely. And as we're starting off this coming cycle of Friday to Friday, we've got the moon finally moving out of Aquarius and adding a little bit of extra stress as it squares the sun in Gemini. It'll be in first conjuncting Neptune and then Chiron in Pisces. So more of that watery kind of energy where we need to pay attention to the emotional range and get out of the tendency to think about everything and just feel our surroundings, because with that sun in Gemini, we want to think about stuff.
There's so much processing happening, especially because Mercury, here we are in the beginning of this week, moves into Cancer, and then Mars moves into Gemini. So this is another big paradigm shift in people's lives. And just like you said, feeling is so important, and making sure that you are taking in consideration so much of how your mind thinks, and to be compassionate in how you feel. Don't push your emotions down by your thoughts or run away from how you feel. This could be where you really feel something, and then your mind's like, I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to feel that. So you can think of a different aspect or put yourself in a different game. Really, you could live yourself in multiple different little dimensions, multiple different lives, and you need to face your feelings. You need to face your godly feelings, what the universe is telling you as well.
Oh, exactly. And lessons are being presented to us. We've still got good old Saturn moving backwards down there in Scorpio. So when we start this weekend off, we're going to have a trine of Saturn with the moon hitting Neptune. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think Saturn is going to be at about 5 degrees and Neptune's at about 5 degrees. So big opportunity to gain insight as we move through this transition from May 31st to June 1st and June 2nd. And then when we come out on Monday, we've got Venus following Mercury, which is, it's going to bring some interesting romantic vibes, I do believe, because Mercury and Venus in Cancer wants to, put new furnishings in the nest and set up housekeeping.
I think this could even be a change in relationships too. I think, over that weekend we just had with the lunar eclipse and everything, Venus and Mercury were on top of each other in Gemini, which really was all this new understanding, these new thoughts. As we come into Cancer, it could be new feelings, it could be new people, it could be a big paradigm shift in relationships. I think the universe is pounding a lot of those in relationships, and we're closing so much of this Gemini story, which has been a year-long process, right? I mean, so much has happened in the sign of Gemini in the last year, and this is the big last hurrah. So I believe in relationships, there are some big final doors closing here, chapters closing, and getting ready for the new beginnings of the summer. And you know, Friday is this grand trine energy of a taste of what the summer is going to be. So I think we start the week off with a little bit, just a little appetizer of what summer will feel like.
Absolutely, yeah. And interestingly enough, you know, Cancer is represented by the crab, and I always think, pardon me here.
No problem.
I think of the hermit crab, and within that, you know, we're moving our house around. We're carrying our house with us. We're carrying our all of our earthly possessions around and looking for a new place to create a nest. So it is going to be interesting to see how relationships do go through a significant shift during this process. And I think by the mid part of this coming week, there is going to be some partnering up with new people and leaving behind some old people.
I think you're right. There's been this huge weird shift in relationships, and it's going to keep continuing. And that's really the change, and then the new beginnings. Cancer is a cardinal sign, and it is one of the strongest cardinal signs because it is at the summer point, or it's on the winter point, which happens over there if you're down in Australia. So this is a very big, powerful time in people's lives of new beginnings with thoughts, new beginnings with your feelings, especially with relationships. And it's very powerful. I mean, here we are, you know, like you said, as we come into the week, I mean, it's a total weird shift. I mean, the moon is going to be tapping into so much, right? It conjuncts Uranus. It really does do that Pluto-Uranus square at the beginning of the week again, and it is about how can you keep moving forward in evolutionary change of the self. This is a nonstop change of the self and the identity of who you thought you've always been. I think that it just keeps on changing, you know. It just that's just this Uranus and Aries, and Uranus and Aries has really been on a nice run here in its direct period. You know, it's really into the new parts of the second decan of Aries. So this is really strong movements, really powerful placement for wild change into people's lives. And this new perception we're at is being tested, and it's being tested again, I think, throughout the week with your own idea of what everything could be. I think ideas could change quick. Perceptions will keep on changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing is that, you know, with this progression of all this activity advancing into Cancer, we've still got the sun very nicely positioned in the beginnings of that second decan of Gemini. Mm-hmm. And that is going to cause us to look more deeply into the meaning and the nature of why we've got commitments in our lives, what we're committed to, how those commitments work, and what the meaning of them is for us. And of course, again, as you were mentioning, we've got the activity of Uranus in there, we've got the activity of Pluto in there. So this is definitely at a stage where people could leave in a huff.
You brought up so much at the beginning of this with Chiron and Neptune, right? And it's so interesting that the sun has been, not only did it start squaring Neptune over the weekend, but as we came into this week, you know, it started squaring that midpoint between Chiron and Neptune. So this has really been a confusing time period. And how funny that Neptune at the end of this week goes retrograde. So talk about a weird week here of intuition and, you know, making it could be like the blinders are on. And what else is happening? Mars is starting to square Neptune. So as even we're jumping maybe into different relationships and different people, I think it's time to really pay attention to your actions, because you could be misguided. It's a lot like the GPS system not working and sending out a rocket that goes and hits the wrong territory. Like, you really have to pay attention deeply here. You know, this is relying heavily on your logic, but making sure your logic isn't misguided, you know, making sure it's guided by spirit. And I think that's the difficulty. If you're going to launch a nuclear bomb in your life and a big change, Make sure you punch the codes in. Make sure you didn't miss a number. Make sure that you're hitting the right targets. Make sure that you're really pay attention to your feelings, because that's what this summer is about, is the feeling. And that's what this is now starting to unveil here. And as Venus is making the square to Uranus and Venus is starting to oppose Pluto, this is the weird territory we're going to start to enter here of, you know what? Are you building the right life? Is it based off your emotions? Are you living in your truth?
Oh, exactly. And the other thing that's going to be interesting as we approach the nation's birthday, as we get closer and closer to July 4th, we are going to be seeing a lot more emphasis on that squaring activity to Uranus by all these planets as well as the Sun. And in addition to that, the opposition to Pluto over in Capricorn really is going to challenge the individual as well as the national consciousness and thought process. So this could be a period of significant shifting in how people are perceiving America, what they're envisioning for the future of America. And I think a lot of your generation and people a few years older, people in their mid-20s, people in their early 20s, are really going to be wanting to get some clarity, wanting to get some answers about where are we going? What are we going to do next? You know, what is the vision for the future? Because the old stuff just simply isn't working anymore. We've outgrown it.
No, it's really not. I think that's that whole Pluto, Capricorn, you know, Uranus square. It really is a breaking of concrete in everybody's life and in our society. It's a big break in the concrete. I mean, let's be honest. We're kind of still set up on factory workers in America. I don't know a factory worker in America. They're pretty hard to find, you know. And so there is this big paradigm shift happening in how we structure this government, how we structure even our individual lives. And how funny that near the ending of this week, we're on that dark side of the moon, you know? I mean, as we're ending the week here, you know, it's right before a new moon. So this week can feel maybe a little sluggish, even though you want so much, because as Mars comes into Gemini and there's all this new energy, it's like this is still trying to close so much and get ready for a new moon that's coming near the weekend. And I feel that it's important to note, especially as Mars, like I brought up earlier, is starting to square Neptune, like make sure you're waiting on the moves. Make sure you're taking in consideration all the facts. Are you taking in consideration that the universe is trying to add the right flow? I think it's so important to really take your time this week. Really make sure everything is in a row before you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially as soon as we hit the first day of June, I think that it's going to actually feel like there is a significant change just in a 24-hour period from the month of May as we step into the month of June. And that, I think, is going to be really fascinating as to how people are like waking up Saturday morning, Sunday morning, and realizing, oh, there's a whole new rhythm here. There's a whole new cycle that I need to start looking at now. And then, of course, we'll all be moving rapidly through that sign of Cancer and entering Leo. So a lot of the things that we gain clarity on over this next week will really be things that we can activate as we move through June and through July and into August. So it does have a long-term effect.
This has a long-term effect because whenever huge outer planets, especially Neptune, is at its stationary position going retrograde, there is a lot of fate coming into town here. These are always periods you pay attention to. So this is the buildup towards that. This is the buildup of a new moon as well, the closing of a moon. And, you know, this is where, you know, this is where you can test people's spiritual energy. I think people could totally jump into new relationships this week when they didn't mean to. I think people could jump into situations that they thought was the right direction when really it was totally not. It was totally wrong. And this tested your spiritual ability to anchor in your truth, to follow spiritual beauty to follow. Saturn and Neptune are in that perfect trine. So at the end of the day, if you go with the flow, if you listen to your intuition, if you anchor in what's truthful, if you really pay attention to what spirit is telling you, because when you add Scorpio and you add Pisces, there is no bullshit. You can see through the bullshit. But I think our minds are just wanting just this quick satisfaction. One thing about Gemini is it's like it wants quick satisfaction, and then there's all this wanting to feel good, right? Venus and Mercury and Cancer. But in the background is, the truth. Don't fall for that gimmick kind of energy. Don't fall for your quick, needs and desires that you want. Remember, like, this is the South Node in Taurus. This isn't about the fluff. This is about anchoring in your truth. This is about making sure you're really investing in the right places in your life that will make sure your desires are met and to make sure that you can live in your truth. So how important to really pay attention to. And a dark moon, I mean, Chris, you and I talk about these dark moons. That tests people. Somebody who like puts up a business on a dark moon or does things like this just isn't really, is almost too impatient.
Well, yeah, you're cultivating disaster. You're courting, the possibility of having one of those episodes where the rocket explodes on the launching pad, and
Boom.
It is going to be a challenging period. And I think a lot of people who are looking at their career status, as these activities start to progress into Cancer and fill out that trine, a lot of people are going to get restless with their career direction, and they're going to start looking around. And Cancer time is not a bad time at all to start, initiating change as far as long-term careers. So that's another aspect as we're starting to advance toward Cancer time here, is look at your career, think about what it is, that you really want to do. Are you getting the fulfillment out of where you're at, and what's the possibility of making a change?
Yeah, because this is one of the rarest opportunities. I would say 2013, a little bit into 2014 after looking at a lot of the astrology, but 2013 was no coincidence of getting your dreams to become true. I mean, Neptune and Saturn in a trine like this doesn't happen a lot. This is a very rare event. This is, especially in water signs, it's very rare to have this in water signs. You would have to have been, I would have to look up, but it's been a long time since an event like this happened. And to have Neptune retrograde at the end of this week, perfectly trining Saturn, really is a signal that it is behind the curtain, that it is more time to pay attention to. Don't get caught up in all the little hoopla in your life. Pay attention to the big picture of what's happening in spirit. Pay attention to what's feeling right. And like you said, when you add Cancer to this grand trine, when you have Pisces and Saturn and all this energy, like, this is where you got to live in your truth. You got to listen to your gut. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Don't do it.
Exactly. And it also is giving us that nice sextile to the activity of good old Pluto and Capricorn. So all of these elements are really like a magical dance. And if you work with the program, you can have a spectacular summer as a result of what happens in next week.
Yeah, and Pluto has finally, this week gone back to 10 degrees. So we're 1 degree off the Pluto-Uranus square. So the universe is kind of taking a little bit off the chokehold here. I mean, literally. But, make sure that you just don't be the rabid dog and just go bite whatever's right in front of you. like, take your time. If you're going to bite something, make sure you bite a hot chick so you can get taken home with her or something. Like,
yeah.
Don't go bite the little kid that just walked right in front of you, because it could totally, end your life. But
yeah, things can backfire with whenever you've got, these actions that are happening, being monitored by good old Uranus and Pluto. Both of those planets really are like a prod. So anyway, with the cards, as we start this week out, Friday, the theme for the day is Seven of Rods. It may be a little bit tedious as we're seeing, this moon transit over good old Neptune, and then hit Chiron. So take your time. Don't force the issue. Minor obstacles will show up, and then you'll be able to clear the path and determine where you're going. As we move into the weekend itself, look at that, the Sun card. Very, very optimistic. This is a card of growth and fruition and maturation. And, you know, a lot of that childlike energy that we associate with the Sun card really does attach itself to the sign of Cancer. So we've got, you know, things moving through Gemini into Cancer, and that Sun energy is going to really get activated. Then next week, just like we were talking about, this is a Temperance card. And according to the old traditional interpretation, the archaic interpretation, this was often seen as a soulmate card. So relationships are going to be coming under review next week. You're going to be figuring out, do I want to spend the rest of my life with this person? And, you know, in the midst of that struggle, figuring out whether or not to cut bait or fish. And finally, we end the week with good old Mars energy, as represented here by the Emperor. And a lot of times the Emperor comes up in readings as having a highlight on the fact that this guy's sitting on the top of a mountain, and their eagles are flying around his head. And so he's got this this elevated perspective. He's looking at the universe from the heights and observing and preparing to rule his kingdom from that perspective. So by next weekend, with that new moon, we're going to be putting a lot of attention on our own personal kingdom.
Yeah, and that Emperor card is strength too, of like just owning it and taking care of business kind of energy. I feel it's like own it. That Mars, strength, strong. And how funny you pulled the Seven of Rods. You know, to me, that card, if you look at it, that's you have the upper hand though. Even though there's all these things coming at you, you're on top. So make sure, if you have the upper hand, make the right choice with your heart. Make the right call. You know, like you still got the upper hand. The universe ain't throwing you at the bottom of the hill having to come up. So this is a week that you could totally handle business. You can make it all happen. Relax. That Temperance card, I think, is kind of the nice overall tone of all the energy, where it's like allow things to happen. Allow spirit to relax. Relax a little bit. It's hard to relax with the sun squaring all this stuff in Pisces, especially this week. The sun does square Chiron. So, you know, let the healing begin, please. And this up here does not know how to heal, unfortunately.
Right, it's the opening of the heart, and Chiron is going to be pulling all that Neptunian energy that it's, you know, sharing with the sign of Pisces. So those two elements, they're definitely going to be getting first the jolt of the square energy of Gemini, and then that nice trine energy, and eventually the grand trine energy. So we've got really a good week coming up, very balanced and harmonious outcome, if you are paying attention to your surroundings.
That's exactly it. Well, I look forward to talking on next Friday as we talk about Neptune going retrograde and we get ready. You know, the sun's getting closer to Jupiter. There is a big unveiling, I feel, from the universe of why these events are all happening. I think it really is all leading towards us seeing what the end of June is going to bring us.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And like I had mentioned earlier, that 4th of July event is going to be very interesting, because by then we're going to be wanting to see what the new future looks like. So we're starting the final phase of journeying into a new vision for ourselves and for our nation and for the planet.
And one thing about becoming aware, which I think a lot of people who watch this are those people, which you're starting to become aware of, like, how fast time is going. You're starting to become aware of, like, how these feelings really are between the seasons. I mean, it just feels like yesterday it's winter, and here it is. We're talking about July 4th. I mean, pay attention to so much of the shifts that are happening right now, and pay attention in your own life, And this is a different feeling than you've ever felt before. We were in a totally different energy space pre-2012. Post-2012, this is exciting. This is really building a future for you that you've never been able to have access to before. So really pay attention to these times.
Yes. Well, David, it has been a delightful discussion once again, and really looking forward to connecting next week and, like you said, investigating all of these interesting phenomena going on.
Oh, it is very interesting, and I can't wait to see what pops up here on the news. So,
yes, it's going to be fun. Well, thanks a lot, David. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you soon, Chris.
Okay, bye.